We are living in extraordinary times, and you are not alone if you feel stressed out. The rate of anxiety and mental health disorders has likely tripled since the pandemic began, and healthcare providers are certainly in one of the most stressful professions. As a marriage and family therapist, I help my patients all the time regulate and resource themselves to be able to feel a bit better. One of the ways stress shows up is that the brain stays busy and can be on overdrive. Do you know when your brain is overthinking? Thinking goes round and round and won't shut off. It can really be a problem when you're lying down trying to fall asleep at night, or when it hijacks your ability to be present with your attention when it's needed in the moment. I sometimes find myself at family dinners thinking about a frustration I had earlier in the day, or an unsolved problem that would have been better left at work. Our attention only has a certain amount of bandwidth, and getting it to move from one thing to another can be challenging. Resentments and dwelling on distressing thoughts or events also falls under this category of overthinking. Because we're usually in our thoughts rather than observing our thoughts, realizing it's happening is half the battle. Usually feeling some sort of bad is the alert that you may be in the overthinking trance. Sometimes it's noticing being in a shame storm or an overwhelm, or noticing that you may appear to be present, but your mind is actually somewhere else. Sometimes it's that my mind won't shut off when it's time to fall asleep. It's a good moment when I notice this and my attention can move to where else I'd like it to be, like a well-lubricated gear. But when it's sticky, here are 3 letting it go techniques that can help. The first one a friend gave to me as a way to digest the day when I fall short of my own expectations. Years ago, I'd leave my office pretty satisfied with the day's work, but by the time I drove 3 miles north to my home, I had dissected every patient interaction and noticed where I thought I could have done better. This wasn't a constructive review of my performance. It was overthinking the day's work, with the result of putting every move I made under a microscope and then feeling bad. My friend suggested I say to myself the phrase, "I did the very best I could with the resources I had today." I did the very best I could with the resources I had today. We have to remember that the level at which we can perform changes day to day, depending on how much we've slept, how many other stressors are going on, what we've eaten. When I say to myself, "I did the very best I could with the resources I had today," it's not that I'm lowering my standards or I stop trying to get better. It's a way to accept my own human limitations on a given day and give myself some grace. A second technique to lubricate letting it go is called the sack of potatoes. It comes from a book by Patricia Stark called Confidence. It's like confidence, but with the word calm. It goes like this. Find a comfortable chair to sit in and let your body relax into it, as if you have no bones at all. Picture your body as a big sack of potatoes, and at your feet, envision cutting open the bottom of the sack of potatoes with a pair of mental scissors, and allow all the potatoes to fall out onto the floor. Notice what happens in your body. Hang out with this image for as long as it's helpful. I offered this technique to my husband the other day after he had gotten up from his computer steaming mad about a news article he had read. I had been thinking about what techniques I might offer you here, and this sack of potatoes was forefront on my mind. I invited him to try it. The result was quick and effective. What I first noticed was his shoulders relaxing, and then a curious look came over his face. He looked at me and nodded like, "It worked." I stayed quiet, and then I noticed him moving his head and eyes, kind of looking around the room. And he said, "We created a nice space to sit here." And he looked at the bookshelves. This is the pre-programmed series of movements called orientation. When we arise out of the stress response, the head and eyes move to take in the environment and naturally orient to what's okay or right rather than to all that's wrong. So here's our third strategy. Sometimes it's not possible to just let it all go. We need a resource to do so. My kids are now young adults, but I still struggle with wanting to bubble wrap them. It's that mother bear in me. My son recently did a long drive to a neighboring state and had to traverse some mountain passes that scare me. I confess, I have a bit of a fear traveling up and down some of these steep 12,000-foot elevation roads where I live here on the border of New Mexico and Colorado. The more I tried to think of something else besides the worst case images my mind was showing me, the more intrusive the images became. Here is the technique that worked for me. Give the problem a name. So in this case, I named it, Afraid It's Not Safe. Then you ask yourself, what does this problem need? And you let the answer just come to you. It may appear as a word or an image, a phrase, a song, like anything really. In my case, I heard the word protection. My overthinking that it's not safe needed to receive some protection. So hold your hand out and with your imagination, receive this resource upon your hand. Take the time you need to fully receive it. And imagine that it's coming to you and it's fully available and all yours just for the asking. And when you've received enough, if you'd like, place your hand on your heart and just let it all soak in. Give it a try and see if you find what I do, that most often it is with this kind of receiving that I'm able to then just let it all go. So now you have 3 new ways to try working with your overthinking mind. The phrase, I did the very best I could with the resources I had today. The sack of potatoes. And resourcing the problem with an image or word. I've written these out for you in the accompanying PDF, so you'll have them handy when you need them. Thank you for watching. I hope these techniques help you in your overthinking moments to let it all go.